A story that we talk a lot about, but I don't feel like it gets enough attention given how notable it is in the rest of the media, which is why we keep talking about it, is, and I'll use this term loosely, I'm not making any medical statement or anything, but in a general sense, what you could just call Trump's decline. Whether it be his decline mentally, that's noticeable cognitively, or energy or entertainment, the way that he's able to connect with crowds, resonate with his base, all those things, there's just a general decline of all of it. And we've seen this at rallies. And there was an interesting piece I want to show you that cites examples just from a 24-hour period where the declining Trump is so present. How low energy and bummed out at rallies he seems to be, him making these mistakes that would be a huge news cycle if it were Biden, but won't be with Trump. And this particular story and the relevant clips didn't get the coverage I would have imagined. The one that brought this to my attention is Aaron Rupar and Noah Berlotsky of Public Notice, the Substack. And they wrote a really good piece titled Trump's Decompensation was the big debate day story, talking about how, in part, Trump's just really almost concerning rally performances in 24 hours got overshadowed by J.D. Vance's facing off with Tim Walz, the vice presidential debate. So everyone's talking about that. We missed this. The vice presidential debate will be a main topic, this piece writes, of public conversation today, or political conversation today. But far more important and disturbing things happened before it took place. This isn't to say the debate wasn't memorable. There were at least a couple exchanges that stood out. One came when J.D. Vance got upset about a moderator interjecting the fact-checked racist lies he used to smear his own constituents. It cites those examples, but you've seen it before. But these moments pale in comparison to Donald Trump's most troubling showing yet on the campaign trail. Across two campaign events in Wisconsin on Tuesday, the former and would-be president reiterated a truth that is much more important than who won the debate, namely that he's morally and intellectually unfit for office. Both Trump events were packed with outrageous defamations and lies. Its targets include troops wounded abroad while he was president, which would be unthinkable in anything resembling a normal era of politics. You'll see that clip in a second where Trump again reiterates a disgusting statement he said before, which is that troops who suffered under, while Trump was president, severe life-changing brain injuries, they just have headaches. Vicious as Trump's attacks were, they also managed to be muddled in ways suggesting he isn't up to the task of being president until he's 82 years old. So let's get into some of this. We won't go through a whole compilation. We've done those before where he's mixing up who the president is, who Nikki Haley is, who he's talking about and what he's trying to say, and the glitches where a word doesn't come out correctly, or him trying to talk about a policy, childcare, or more recently the jobs question, and just things are coming out of his mouth and you're not exactly clear. He got asked, how are you going to lower costs at one point in that interview, and just starts talking about how Biden did something with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, all muddled and confusing, and not the Trump of 2016. As bad as he was definitely more energetic and articulate and could turn his thoughts into language much more effectively. But a big part of these rallies too is that he's just so sad, so bummed out, and so low energy. And that is to be noted. Here, first though, you have him escalating because he can't keep people engaged with energy. He instead tries to engage them with escalating rhetoric, like accusing Kamala Harris of murder. Let's see here.
By the way, I'm outraged that she let in the savage who raped and murdered Rachel Morin. Kamala let her in. She murdered him. In my opinion, Kamala murdered him, just like she did, just like she had a gun in her hand.
As devastating as murders are, first of all, the murder rate has plummeted under Biden-Harris, currently lower than it was any time under Trump. But also, even if he's talking about perpetrated by an undocumented immigrant, which given his track record, I'm sure that was the context of the clip, that also happened when he was president. So are those murders his fault? But he wouldn't apply that standard equally. And then if you're just saying any murders, then what about the higher murders under you? there are way more murders because you're mishandling. You can more directly draw that connection. But again, logical consistency is not his strength. Then here, imagine if Biden did this.
Washington would not get us. They said that we have to guard the United Nations, which meant the president of North Korea, who's basically trying to kill me. So they want to guard him, but they don't want to guard me. So we're going to start having it out with them because we've sort of have it.
He's trying to say Iran. He said North Korea. In the next clip, he's going to say Iraq when he means Iran. That's a little bit more, all right, Iraq, Iran. Sounds more similar. North Korea, and you're trying to say Iran? I'm not saying that doesn't happen. The frequency and how that's increasing is notable. But imagine the mainstream media coverage every time. You don't have to imagine it. Remember the coverage every time Biden would have a moment like that. Some of them weren't actually that notable. Some of them, like some of the moments of the debate, were actually concerning. You understood it. My request, though, is regardless of where you stand on how much coverage is justified for mixing up names and countries, can we just at least apply the standard equally? Because I remember very specifically one particular moment that's popping in my head is after, I think it was the documents report that was released and Biden came out to speak and the whole press conference went well, and then he was walking away and then mixed up countries and said one country instead of the other and then walked away. And that became all the coverage for the rest of the day. I haven't seen any coverage on this or the next moment.
Do you think Israel should retaliate to these missile attacks from Iran? But also, do you believe that you should have been tougher on Iran after they had launched ballistic missiles in 2020 on U.S. forces in Iraq, leaving more than 100 U.S. soldiers injured?
So, first of all, injured. What does injured mean? Injured means you mean because they had a headache, because the bombs never hit the fort.
They had brain damage.
Means you mean because they had a headache, because the bombs never hit the fort. So just so you understand, there was nobody ever tougher in Iraq. They had no money with me. They would have made any deal with me. I would have had a deal made within, literally, I would have had a deal.
And then, it would have been 2 weeks. Everything was going to be 2 weeks. And he's meaning to say Iran. And again, there he says Iraq when he means Iran. All from just one day. And I won't keep subjecting you to this, but here, get a sense of the power that Trump had before was being able to grab media attention through his entertainment, as vile as it was. If you can get all the press to focus on you because ratings are going to go up because everyone's just fascinated, as he did do before, then there are a lot of people out there who are going to see you, unfortunately, and buy your BS and then support you, which is how Trump became the figure that he currently is. He doesn't have that power anymore. I'm sure often they'd rather go cut if there's a parallel rally going on with Kamala Harris. Cut to her. There's going to be roaring crowds and she's going to be hyped. But instead you have this. Listen, zero feedback from the crowd.
Did an amazing job. Operation Warp Speed is being studied by many, many schools, both militarily and business-wise. Operation Warp Speed, even my greatest enemies, they say, what a job that was. That was a job like nobody else has ever done. And it's ripped the world apart. Every country got ripped apart, including China. China was delayed, but it was hit harder proportionally probably than almost any country. It was a terrible time. Probably $60 trillion in debt.
If you're really listening closely, there's a little cough. So there are people in the room, apparently.
Damage, and caused by the Wuhan lab. I said that from the beginning. It came out of Wuhan. And the Wuhan lab, it wasn't from bats in a cave that was 2,000 miles away. It wasn't from Italy. It wasn't from France. They blamed everybody. It's really the China virus. But we did a great job with the ventilators, with the...
And that's 56 seconds in. This clip is 2 minutes and 9 seconds of just... and there's no response from the people in the room. And that's not a bombshell. But as we review more and more rallies, and the point that this piece from Public Notice is making is that this is a change. And I feel that a part of it's the decline thing, but a part of it is it doesn't seem like Trump's heart is in this race like it has been in times gone by. Of course he wants to win, but somewhere in there he doesn't have the motivation to make it happen like he did before, which is strange given how much is on the line because of all of his legal cases. But he really doesn't seem to have the passion that he did before. Some of that could just be he's tired. And it's not to laugh at people aging or anything like that, but just to point out America took very seriously, and it led to Biden getting off the ticket, the concerns around his age and age-related impacts. Why, even though the polls show people are concerned about that with Trump, why is there not the same discussion about this guy barely younger than Biden? He's slowing down a lot, less energetic, can't rile up a crowd as much, and it's just not the same, which I'm glad about. I hated whenever he was able to, through entertainment, get attention and then use that attention for really bad end goals. But what this creates, and because we just on the live stream too showed clips, some of you just you can't hear them again, like the childcare 2 minutes of Trump, blah, 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 blah. I won't play them again. But Trump failing to be able to talk anymore articulately about policy is why then his surrogates have to go on TV and translate. Oh no, what he means is this and this and this. Here's Tim Scott, a clip we looked at on the bonus show. Get the bonus show. You're not on the bonus show? By clicking the join button below? Sheesh, so easy. We have a ball. Talk about this and watch how Tim Scott translates Trump's erratic and irrational tariff proposals.
People working paycheck to
Are you a
paycheck.
free trader, Senator? Do you
Absolutely,
agree,
yeah.
agree with all the tariffs? Do you think John Deere 200%?
Listen,
do you think companies that make stuff here should be a 15% tax? That's industrial policy, isn't it?
I believe that President Trump oftentimes talks in the abstract.
Okay.
Number one. Number two.
Oh, well, Tim, that just solves it, doesn't it? Just trust me, okay? When he says 200% tariff, he means no tariffs. When he says terminate the Constitution, he means strengthen the Constitution. It's this interesting, high-minded way of expressing yourself where you say something but mean something completely different, which is better because of Trump. You know Trump. He's just... That's why he has such the resonance with people. What are you talking about, Tim? He talks in abstractions, and these CNBC hosts are sort of confused and go, well, then how do we know how to believe him? Tim Scott thinks he has a good answer. We'll see if we agree.
President Trump oftentimes talks in the abstract.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, I do believe that we have the final...
So what are we supposed to believe then?
Well, listen, let's believe his performance. Believe what we saw for 2017 to 2020. Well, let me finish because you asked a good question. What should we believe? We should believe that a 28%, 21%, reducing the taxes from 35 to 21%, repatriated almost $2 trillion from around the world, bringing it home. We should believe the 7 million jobs that he created, and 2/3 of those jobs went to African Americans, Hispanics, and women. We should actually believe in what he produced. Yes,
that excludes,
100%.
obviously, that excludes COVID, right? Part of what you're saying is we should sort of take this timeout period around COVID and not include that in
Not that's not what I'm saying at all. I would actually say that if you look at COVID itself specifically, they said that you couldn't get a vaccine in 10 years or 5 years. He did it in
I'm
9
saying
months.
on the economic numbers. And the reason I'm raising this is because when we try to do an apples to apples between the Trump administration and the Biden administration, invariably what we hear is, look at all of the economic growth during the Trump administration. But by the way, please don't look at the last year and then look at how terrible we say that the Biden administration did on a relative basis. But by the way, please don't even contemplate the idea that anything happened before that as it relates to COVID, right?
Let us ask the American people, are they better off now than they were 4 years?
I had that same reaction when we watched this before. Just sometimes I feel like Tim Scott gives me the energy of someone who watched a politician on TV and then, you know what he gives me the vibe of? When I imitate politicians, you know, I think the American people, blah, 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 blah. What do you, it's so irritating because he doesn't engage at all with the point that was made by the CNBC host, which is the thing you do is you cite statistics from the first 3 years of Trump's presidency to exclude the pandemic. But then you include in the record of Biden-Harris all the problems that were created by the pandemic and exacerbated by Trump's mishandling of it. That's not a fair analysis. And you exclude, by the way that growth slowed under Trump compared to what it was doing under Obama. So you want us to perceive Trump as great because things were good for a few years, essentially because of what Trump inherited, and then he completely botched the moment where he was supposed to be a leader, a crisis. But then you say exclude that, but then include everything that came of that pandemic for Biden-Harris. But the crazy thing to me is how that works for people. And people go, yeah, let's go back. Let's go back to 4 years ago. We were in the pandemic, you goober. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Probably not. Probably you are. Sorry, I'm going to speak for you. You are. Okay. Doesn't mean there's not more to do. But man, it's weird how we've had this collective amnesia.
Please don't even contemplate the idea that anything happened before that as it relates to COVID, right?
Let us ask the American people, are they better off now than they were 4 years ago? The answer is emphatically no. Why? Because when the average family
we were writing them
is
checks
spending
with Donald Trump's name on them.
$1,000, $1,075 and lost spending power, of course you're not better off. When gas is up 50% more than the last month.
And why do you think that was?
Well, obviously, there's two reasons. Number one, the reasons why the average American family has less spending power today than they did beforehand was because the first vote the Democrats took in January 2021 was that. Can I finish my comment? Thanks so much. $1.9 trillion of additional spending from the federal government
after we're already coming out of it. Yeah.
As an accelerated inflation. Inflation hits 9% in June, July.
Okay, he goes on all the things. He lists off the infrastructure law after that and the Inflation Reduction Act. And I promise I'm actually just doing what I'm about to do for the sake of time, not because I want you to get the bonus show, but you should. We did talk about when we went over that, the specific numbers on, he was saying that this was deficit spending and this caused inflation, and actually infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act is deficit neutral because the Inflation Reduction Act decreased the deficit and the infrastructure law moderately increased the deficit, so those canceled out. Then the American Rescue Plan, comparing COVID relief under Trump versus Biden, looking at the delay on how that's going to impact inflation. And if you want to say Biden is single-handedly responsible for inflation, explain the global phenomenon, explain how Trump's dumping of money into the economy didn't impact that. And then we can also have a thoughtful conversation. We get past the partisan stuff about the supply chain problems that Trump mismanaged and exacerbated. And of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, of course, corporate price gouging, but we went over all that. So do find that, please, if you'd like to. But that's all they have, is revising Trump's actual record, taking out a part, but leaving in a part for Biden-Harris inconsistently, and then saying, let's go back to before this global crisis. Yeah, I'd like that too. Let's go back there, but switch out the president. I'm good with that. That's kind of actually what we could do in November. Look at that. Because we've solved these problems and not have Trump back. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Normally, this is the part where I talk about the bonus show, but I've talked about it too much, so I won't.